would say that what they finally got was not perfect, but it's good for both sides, or are both sides still stinging from not getting everything they wanted in there? How are you feeling about it?
Well, it's good to be with you, Joe and the gang. I would say that it's the former. I think people recognize that this isn't perfect. I would not have written this bill exactly this way, but overall, this is a good thing for the country, and of course it's an emergency, an urgent moment. And you know, it's rare you get a 96-0 vote in the United States Senate unless it's something like naming the post office after a historic figure. So this is a $2 trillion bill. It's an important rescue operation. I see this as an effort to weather the storm. With respect to the last question that was raised on small businesses and how you get your loan forgiven, if you've already laid off employees, and some, of course, have, if you use these funds to rehire those employees and use them to pay your, fixed debts, then you qualify. So obviously, there are lots of people who have already had to close their doors since they had no customers walking into their restaurants or bars or whatever. They will be eligible, and those loans will be forgiven. They should last about 2 months. That's one area that may well need to be extended, depending on what happens with fighting the virus.
Does it walk the fine line between Main Street and big corporations and Wall Street, Senator? And I would imagine that we've all learned, given what happened last time around in the financial crisis, hopefully you learn from every one of these situations. But do you think it threads that needle for not making it look like we're just subsidizing risk in the private sector and then having the taxpayers shoulder it?
I think so. This was an issue of great concern to many of us, really trying to lock down the safeguards and accountability, especially around the monies that go to some of the biggest businesses, big corporations. And we made it absolutely clear that to the extent that the government is providing cash, equity as opposed to loans, it's important to protect the taxpayers' interests. By taking, a non-voting stock interest that would be sold off later on. Most of that is in the form of loans, relief to the large companies. And I would say that, if you look at workers, the main two components here are how the beefed up unemployment compensation will work along with the small business loan forgiven piece. I mean, those two taken together are designed to make sure that in the first instance, we try to keep employees on payroll. But if they can't be on payroll during this period of time, they would have at least around 100% replacement income in many cases when they go on unemployment compensation for the 4-month period. So it's an emergency bill that I think, to answer your question, I think it addresses all parts of the economy in a smart way.
I wanted to go further with this, Senator. I mean, do you think at this point what it's designed to do is not a bailout, really? And maybe we didn't need to be quite as concerned since it's a relief package. And because you can't really assign any blame, I don't think, maybe you can talk about previous buybacks, things like that in hindsight certainly don't look like they were very strategically very smart. But that makes this a little bit different. And I think otherwise Republicans and Democrats, which, they've been like cats and dogs recently, that's the only thing that really allowed this to come together so quickly and with a pretty good outcome, I think. Don't you think that we're all in this together, like we keep saying?
Yeah, we are. And as you said, I mean, this is, we have to fight this coronavirus, and that means both surging resources to the front lines, to the healthcare workers, making sure that we really begin to deploy more tests. I mean, we did get caught way behind on that, beginning to catch up. Obviously, we need to make sure that we get the personal protective equipment to the nurses and doctors and others on the front line. Got to get the ventilators. So we've really got to win this fight against the coronavirus. And, of course, a big part of that has been social distancing. And so it's certainly not the fault of any business that we don't have, customers coming into the door of the restaurant or getting on an airplane. And so that's why I agree with those who say this is not a stimulus package, right? Putting more money into someone's pocket at this point in time is really to make sure they pay their ongoing bills. It's not because they're going to be able to run out and go to a restaurant or go to Disney World or anything like that. So this is weathering the storm.
Senator, to that end, if this is really about weathering the storm, given that the airlines asked for a very specific bailout that's industry-specific, if you will, so it's not part of the broader package, can you justify to the public and explain your rationale for the executive compensation program, capping that at $425,000? A lot of Americans, small business owners and others, are going to think that's unconscionable. And also the fact that certain the CEOs, for example, are likely to make millions of dollars. Can you explain your rationalization or justification for that?
No, I don't like that provision. You asked me at the beginning whether I thought this was a perfect bill. This is far from a perfect bill, actually. And there were a whole series of concerns that I had and others around how the money going to the biggest corporations like the airline industry would be used. Now, we tied down some important protections with respect to, preventing stock buybacks. That was important. As you say, the airline industry was on a stock buyback spree. And so before this, executive compensation has been limited. I mean, funds from this cannot be used to give bonuses. But one of the things we're going to be watching closely is how those monies are spent, which is why we created a number of oversight mechanisms, including an inspector general with subpoena power. I would have liked to see a lot more of these conditions written into the bill itself. Some were, but with respect to others, it's going to be a vigilant public that's going to, I think, have to be the watchdog here, along with the Congress and oversight. So to answer your question, I would have preferred to see more limitations on the use of these funds written into the bill when it comes to the kind of things you're talking about, executive compensation.
Would you call on the boards of the airlines, for example, not to compensate at 2019 levels?
Yes, I would, and I can tell you, and I think you know this. I've talked to some of the folks at some of the big hotels. So, for example, Marriott is based in Bethesda, Maryland, my state. I know that the CEO, Arnie Sorensen, he's not taking any pay. I mean, they had to lay off employees because no one was coming into the doors of their hotels. And he said, I'm not going to be taking any pay while I'm laying off employees. So, yeah, I hope. I hope. I mean, this may be whistling in the wind here, but I would hope that the CEOs of some of these folks would understand that they need to be part of this effort to, sacrifice some as we go through this very difficult period. Many Americans are getting hammered. The whole purpose of this relief bill is to try to soften the blow on those workers. But I can tell you, Americans and certainly myself and many others will not take kindly if we believe that executives are abusing the resources in this bill that were designed to get through the storm, not pad anybody's pockets.